Hey there everyone, I'm Todd Nauck. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So today is the last chapter of this X-Men group shot as we put in the colors for Havok, Psylocke, Strong Guy, and Polaris. And this project will be done. It's been a long time coming. Here it is, the final chapter. Let's flip the camera around and let's start dropping in these Copic marker colors. Previously on X-Men, we colored Gambit and Rogue. So now let's start dropping some colors here on Havok. So we're going to start with his skin tones. So we're going to come in with some E00. Now as these characters get even smaller, we'll be using fewer colors just because the further they are in the background, the less detail they will see as opposed to the characters who are closer in the foreground. So just some E00. And let's color in some hair. We'll use a couple of shades of yellow, starting with the Y21. He's got the blonde hair. Even though this is a smaller figure, we can still get a little bit of a highlight ring through his hair there. Leaving some white of the board. And we'll add a little Y13 in here as well. Just kind of blend that into that darker shade of yellow to get our desired shade of blonde. I'm going to use this Y13 as well for the yellow parts of his costume. We'll go ahead and hit those, like the X underneath his jacket. Little belt portion right there. Have a little bit of a seam. It's really small, but I think we can get enough color in there to convey that detail. And now we will color his jacket. I'm going to use two different shades here blended together to kind of get a different shade of blue, because we have a lot of characters with similar blue colors like Bishop and Dazzler, Beast right down here. So for Havok, we want kind of a bit of a bluish green, but not a full blue green. So I'm going to start with some BG09. Just lightly put this in here. Now it's a little too blue-green for my tastes, so we're not going to leave it this exact shade. We're going to come in with other shades of blue to help achieve that exact color I want. But for now, this will be the base color, this BG09. Through the pants here a little bit. So now I'm going to go over this BG09 with some B04. Now I'd done a test shot of this on a separate artboard. I'll show you what I did there. So I applied some BG09, then I went over it with this B04. And I liked how it turned out, so I knew I could use it here on the illustration now. So now coloring over all of this BG09 with the B04 here to achieve the shade of blue that I want. Always feel free to test out the blending of your colors. See what, on a scratch sheet of paper, see what sort of colors will develop when you mix them before you commit to your illustration if you've never blended those two colors before. See what they look like on a separate artboard, little scratch sheet, and then you will be able to see if it's something you want to commit to on your illustration. See if it works first, if it gives you the right look. So I'm always doing color tests on a scratch sheet if I'm wanting to try a new blending trick before I commit to putting it down on the actual art. Because once it's down, it's pretty much committed. So let's put some orange for his Havok effect around his fists here. Some orange energy glow. So I'm going to use the YR12. So YR12. Now let's drop in some shadow grays. So we're going to start with a cool gray 1 for his face. A little bit here on the fingers. Go ahead and put some of this shaded gray in the hair as well. And in the yellow parts of his costume. Got some of that blue into the yellow part of his costume. Well, I can just go over that with the marker there and it kind of blends it out. And let's come in with a little darker shade of cool gray. Some cool gray 4 to put over the blues of his costume. Down here through the abdomen, maybe a little bit here on the pants, a little bit under his chin, on that side of the collar. All right, and that pretty much takes care of Havok. Let's slide up here and let's color Psylocke. Going to start with some YR000 for her skin tone. She's so tiny. These last 3 characters are super tiny. Not sure how much detail we can get in with the colors, but we can definitely express who they are. Could definitely get those shades in. So some YR000. Just add a little second coat there. Now let's drop in some purple for her hair. Going to start with the BV11 initially. For the base shade. I'm going to come in with some V01 to really punch up this purple. So I'm layering 2 different shades of purple to get the shade that I want. You know what? I think I'm going to come in with a 3rd shade now that I look at it, just to get, I want to get a little more pop, a little more purple punch. So I'm coming in with some V15. Just because I want it a little more purpley. There we go. That's giving me the purples that I want for her hair. Now for her uniform, I'm going to come in with, what shade do I want to use? I'm going to use the B45 to start off with. It's a muted shade of blue here initially. Leaving some of the outer parts of her uniform white there, so it looks more of like a reflective, leathery sort of look. So that's the reflected highlights, I should say. Now I'm going to go over this with some B04, which is pretty much the classic X-Men blue that I've been using for many of the characters, but with this B45 underneath, it'll give her a slightly different vibe. Now we need to color her sash, which actually her sash is, sometimes it's red, sometimes it's pink. I'm going to go with pink this time for her. So we're going to use the RV66. And now for her buckle, some RV24, a little X-Men logo buckle right there. And let's color her sword. So we're going to start with some B000 for the blade. And for the hilt, we'll use some E8-4. I think will suffice. Just a little tiny bit there. Now let's bring in some grays for Psylocke. Going to use some cool gray 1 on the blade there, going over that blue. And some shadows, some very simple detail shadows here. Just cutting some swaths right through there. That was cool gray 1, now a little cool gray 3. Put a little bit of this in her hair. Just on the underside there. Just to create a little depth. There we go. And that pretty much takes care of Psylocke. These smaller characters get pretty easy to color the smaller that we go. Okay, and now to color Strong Guy and Polaris, both from X Factor. They're both going to have similar shades of blues and yellows, so we're going to use the same colors for both of them color both of them at the same time since they share very similar costume colors. So let's start with the yellows. So that'd be Y13. So we're going to color the big X here on Strong Guy's uniform first, and I don't know if we see much more of him underneath. And then for Polaris, she has that same shade of yellow. Now for just a little bit of darker shades, some Y21. So Y13 before, now Y21. Just a teeny tiny bit. Now let's come in with some blues. We'll use the B04. See on his gloves right here. This glove over here. And same for Polaris. Just little tiny spots left for her. She is one of the smallest. She is probably the smallest figure on this image, with Iceman and Archangel being close, tied for close second. So I'm leaving the white, again, let's use my mechanical pencil here to point. So this part right here, I'm leaving white as that shiny, leathery highlight, much like I did for Psylocke and Kitty Pryde, and well, I guess mostly those characters. And I did the same here for Strong Guy as well, just right up here on the shoulder. All right, so that takes care of the blues. Now let's do their skin tones. E00. Drop in the base, the E00. Same for Psylocke. Kind of bring in a second coat just to punch up the vibrancy. Let's see, let's bring in a little E01, at least on Strong Guy, because he has a little bit more mass. We see a little bit more of his flesh here that we can actually get just a little bit more color detail in. So the E01 is what I'm using now. Maybe just a little bit for Polaris. Just a teeny tiny touch. Teeny tiny touch of color there. So let's see, let's color her X logo, a little red, R24 right there. So quick, so easy. And I missed one of her belts, so I'm just going to use that Y13 again, just to make sure we've filled in that detail. Now let's see, for Guido, he has his shades. We're going to use a little neutral gray 4 for the sides of his neutral gray 4 is a little too dark. Let's make that a neutral gray 3. Yeah, a little neutral gray 3 here for the for the sides of his shades. Maybe that little bridge part there goes over the nose. A little neutral gray 3, and let's come in with a little BG 000. It's kind of a bluish green. Just to drop in a little bit of little color in the lenses there. So tiny, so small, it's hard to get a lot of detail in there, and that's okay. Now let's put some green in Polaris's hair. Going to start with the YG03 as a base shade. I'm also going to use the same YG03 for her green magnetic power signature. For a nice glowy effect, a nice light color for a glowy effect. Going to bring in some, that's a bit too dark of a shade. I'm going to come in with, yeah, some G02. Kind of sculpt out her hair a little bit more. A little darker shade for wherever the light's not hitting, so that underneath the coif behind her back, just for a little more dark shade. And let's try a little G05 to do the outer perimeter of her power signature there, just so we have two different shades of green to give us a little more eye candy. All right, now let's come in with some cool grays for some shadow, a few shadow effects. So I'm going to use a little bit of this cool gray in the tuft of hair on Guido's head there, and also for the shadow on the skin and yellow parts of his uniform. Sculpt out these muscles. Further away are from the light source is where we want to put those shadows. So the light's pretty much coming from above. So the underside, and it's a little bit to the left, so we're putting most of our shadows on our right-hand side. Just a little bit for Polaris here. Around the arms, just a little bit there in the face. And a little bit, let's see, let's go with a cool gray 4 for some shadows in the blue. Not going to be a lot, just a little bit. Not really much we can add here to Polaris, just a teeny tiny bit, just such a subtle shading. A little bit of this same cool gray 4 in the greens here in the deeper recesses of the shapes of the hair to really create that sense of depth. Such a tiny little figure way up there. So that pretty much takes care of these 4 characters. Not a lot that we can, do with the detail, but we still have one last bit to finish, and that's some background. So I'm going to pull the camera back. Now let's add the background color. So I was using neutral grays prior, so I think it was neutral 2, because I had used some neutral grays and some, I think it was the BG90 here for this side. So now we want to do the same over here. So I'm going to just start to lay in a base shade for the teched out walls. Just the finishing touch here. Oops, sorry gang. I was just adding some of that same neutral gray. Hopefully I said neutral gray before. Always pay attention to the codes that I post on the actual video. Sometimes I say the wrong number, but I post the right number code. So just adding the neutral gray all throughout the background here. Gonna leave this part of Dazzler's power effect white, since she's generating her laser lights, laser light show. Let's see, we have some more spots. Let's see over here behind Beast and next to Kitty. Over here, in between Kitty and Wolverine. And a couple more spots right here at the Kitty Wolverine Jubilee triangle. Okay, so next up we're going to just bring in a little bit of a darker shadow in certain points, like behind Dazzler and Beast here. So some neutral gray 3. Let's see, this is a ledge right here, separating the 2 planes. A little bit more under Havok. Let's put a little bit here behind Beast. A little bit here behind Kitty. Not that she's really casting a shadow that far, but just kind of gives us a little bit of pop. All right, I think that pretty much does that for that shadow. Now, I used some BG90 prior, pretty sure I did. And I want to use that again for here, just so that we add a little bit of sense of color to this gray. So it's not just full on gray, it's kind of this bluish greenish, hint of bluish greenish sort of gray. This gives it a little bit, just a little bit of hint of color. So I'm just going over all this neutral gray with this BG90. Sometimes lightly, sometimes very intensely. Like here I'm putting more of the BG90 on this level of the wall, because then they have a platform and then this further back part of wall. So it kind of delineates the 2 planes, the 2 separate walls, the distance. So this part of the wall will actually look a bit lighter than this closer up part of the wall. And that takes care of that background. So let's pull the camera back a little bit further. And let's add I gotta sign this piece. Oops, I was a little bit off camera. Sorry, gang. Just putting my signature there. And then the date we finished on was 1/31/2019. And that's it. That is the finished X-Men group shot. Now I should have a link to this final image in the video description below. But there we go. Let's flip the camera around and sign off. Okay, gang, hey, there we go. It's finished. All the X-Men are now penciled, inked, and colored. It's taken us quite a few chapters, probably, gosh, over 30 chapters of videos to completely draw this image, but it's been so much fun. I hope you've enjoyed the journey with me, the process. Hopefully you'll learn something and how to draw your group shots, where to place each character, different size characters, foreground, middle ground, background, different sizes, so it gives the eye more to play with. How to color them, how much detail to put into foreground characters versus background characters. Hopefully you learn some tips there, as well as maybe working a little background element to give your characters an environment to live in, to make them just a little bit more believable, a little bit more of a believable world. So hopefully you enjoyed this process, and we'll see what happens next for the next series of art videos. But thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for subscribing to my channel. If you haven't yet, please feel free to subscribe. And if you could, feel free to leave a comment and a thumbs up. I definitely appreciate that interaction. And if you're on any of the social media, so am I. And all my links are listed in the video description below. Now, here is a shot of the finished piece, and I should have this linked in the video description below. And at the very least, you can visit my other social media platforms, because I've probably posted them there as well, at least on Instagram. So gang, thank you so much. Keep on drawing, keep having fun. See you again real soon with an all new art project.